define what is right and wrong, then whose reason is correct? If we had a consensus of human reason, we wouldn't have political parties. I mean, human reason's different from person to person. We have moral chaos at that point. So God's standard is set. And granted, there are some mysterious aspects of that. Go ahead, Ryan.
We not only have political parties, but we have religious sects because religious people don't agree with that.
Absolutely.
In Jesus' time, there was the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Essenes. The Jews couldn't agree. Now today, Christians don't agree. And
but I would see in Christianity, there's a core broad of essentials that where Christians do agree, and that there's a difference, for example, between a Pentecostal and a Methodist that's minimal versus that of a Mormon or a Jehovah's Witness. You can definitely see where it steps outside. And those commandments within Israel in those particular situations, especially in the book of Leviticus and all those other things, again, we don't have any application of that except for the one man who committed blasphemy and he was given the death penalty, but we don't know the extenuating circumstances. And plus, the second thing is that according to the Christian worldview, which I will come from, is the fact that the law of God protects the human essence. It protects the fact that humans are sacred. So you should not kill, and how you label murder and how you label stealing, I mean, we can all reinterpret this, but those basic overall commandments, basically God is saying, I've created you in my image and you are sacred. Yeah, okay. I mean, and so those divine commandments, I will agree with you, Ryan, there are some very mysterious points about those.
I'm sorry, you have not established that humans are sacred.
Right, so go ahead.
Right.
I believe there was a point in Exodus, wasn't it, where a man was killed, stoned for picking up sticks on the Sabbath. And Stephen in the New Testament was stoned for adultery, or excuse me, for blasphemy, and there was a woman caught in adultery. So we know those practices were certainly in effect, and today in Islam they carry on our Old Testament rules of stoning.
Your name?
Oh, my name's TJ.
Yes, TJ.
I have a question. It kind of goes with morality, of course, and
Sure.
I have I guess like you didn't say like you said that obviously like there's you're not saying that all atheists are unethical, and of course
Absolutely
there's
not.
Christians that
Absolutely not.
and I kind of when you said that like well that's good, that's not the problem. Of course, like if me and you were walking down the street. We're walking, we're talking, all of a sudden we look over and we see a man 300 pounds kicking a woman on the ground, 14. Both me and you would go over and, stop the situation, rescue her, I'm sure. With no reason. Now, and anybody here would probably absolutely agree with me. The only the difference is, when it comes to morality, is that probably what we disagree with is that you say, because I feel that way, me being the atheist, I borrowed it from God and Christianity, when I myself would say it's the other way around. I say that because we don't, want to kill each other, and we all feel disgusted when we see a child abused, and we all feel sick to our stomach when we hear of things like child rape on the news and such and stuff like that, and that's going on through all of time. I guess my question comes along is that when it comes to that kind of morality, where we all would rush to stop, and of course there's the C.S. Lewis thing that if we heard somebody crying help in the distance, even though it's dangerous, if we ran away, we'd feel guilty or bad that we did such a thing. So that inner consciousness,
We do with our guilt.
absolutely.
Okay, sure.
So my question is like being a religious person, and actually a Christian. Not just a religion,
No,
a Christian.
I will assert that the Christian
Yep.
worldview, I'm not arguing for general views.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Would you, if brought to when a person is being beaten, tortured, whipped, stabbed, impaled, everything like that, would you go to stop him? As I would, if I saw that harm, would you stop? But because of that actual sacrifice being made is the basis of your own faith. Because if you were to get into a time machine with me and went into where Jesus was being crucified, I would go up there and stop him. I would stop him from being killed. Well, I don't know what you're doing. I guess that's the question. That's the question.
Okay.
Because if that didn't happen, you wouldn't be here today in terms of talking.
Obviously.
You know what I mean? And therefore you would say, I wouldn't do that because of some great sacrifice that you had to be made.
Okay. I understand the gist of it. Let me, if I can, just respond very quickly to that. Number one, obviously we must distinguish the fact that Christ's suffering was a sacrificial willingness to go. In a sense, it would be the word deicide, if you wanted. I mean, from my point of view. Okay. Obviously, if we see a person on the street, the question becomes in a naturalistic, materialistic worldview, what compels me, okay, to go and stop this person when really a lot of this of naturalism, especially if we're going to frame it in the Darwinian sense, is just to pass on my genotype to the next, survival of the fittest. So again, and I've done topics on suffering and evil, and I can agree to a certain extent. The problem becomes is there's a certain mystery of human existence because we are finite beings, that there are certain things that we just don't necessarily understand in its full capacity. And I'm not against, number one, science, and I'm not against, obviously I'm going to approach it from a different worldview, as we know that much of the Judeo-Christian worldview, you can check, obviously, the books and everything. I'm not going to go off on a tangent. I'm going to answer your question. Actually push science forward in a lot of, Newton and a lot of other people. Kepler, Faraday were all believers, and that they believed that they were thinking God's thoughts after him. As far as the torture thing, of course, we would stop it. But again, the question becomes one in a chance universe made of random, unguided processes. My question is how do you ground reason? How do you ground logic? And how do you ground any rationality whatsoever? I have not heard anything from a non-theistic point of view that satisfies that. And yes, but that, again, does not mean that the atheist or the non-theist cannot be ethical. By no means am I ever claiming that. Dan's a nice guy. I've known Dan for a little bit of time. But at the same time, those laws, for example, with Israel, were covenant people. It's a different time. And as far as the tribes that God destroyed, for example, we can look at Sodom and Gomorrah, we can look at things like that. It was because of these people were not innocent. And this was absolute justice. And again, here's the problem. If death is all there is in the naturalistic, materialist worldview, which you have to posit, ultimate justice is impossible, and it's troubling. People like Bertrand Russell had that problem. He's like, this makes my foundation of absolute, utter despair. And the reason why he said it is because I can take a hypothetical case of a 2-year-old kid getting corrupted, and we would both try to stop it. And if we couldn't, though, and the perpetrator never gets caught on earth, what in random, unguided processes would bring justice unless there's an afterlife? And I struggle with, let me tell you this, and I will go out on a limb, is there are days when I don't want to be a Christian because some of the things trouble me. I'll admit it, okay? However, does that negate the truth value of the claims? That's where I've said no. One of the hardest things for me to deal with is the struggle of divine punishment. And I got relatives right now who completely disagree with me. Okay? And the issue becomes, I don't know everything about justice. Number two, Jim asked me very, very soundly, is the fact that the problem becomes is if I'm evil, especially according to the Christian worldview, I'm going to complain about a problem that I have contributed to. As soon as I've committed evil, then I have really no grounds to complain about it. And at that point, I become I'm a part of the problem, so basically I'm saying, well, what gets for me? God is a just God. He is not some flaming tyrant standing up there creating people just so he can destroy them. God is a just God. He will execute fair punishment. Now, just because there's mysterious aspects of that, I think we have to open ourselves up to think about the mysterious aspects of that. And like I said, I'll give you hell for an example, and I'll finish with this. On the one hand, God looks like an absolute tyrant. But we take the case of a young girl who has been corrupted and just maybe sold in human trafficking, and the trafficker never gets caught on earth. He gets away with it. So here I am, I'm stuck in a legitimate moral dilemma.